I'm Caryl Cohn, and welcome to Purpose 360, the podcast that unlocks the power of purpose to ignite business and social impact. Welcome to Purpose 360. I'm Caryl Cohn, and the show that we're going to have today is one of my favorites of the year. It's our purpose predictions for 2025. And we have marvelous guests on the show. Each one has a very different and distinct point of view. We have Caryl Stern from LionTree. We have Martin Whittaker from Just Capital, Jenny Lawson from Keep America Beautiful, and Justina Nixon-Saintil from IBM. Each one has a different point of view on their vision for the coming year, and I am so excited about it. So let's get started. So Justina Nixon-Saintil, welcome back to the show. You are one of my favorite people in the entire world with the gigantic title of Chief Impact Officer and President of the IBM International Foundation. Welcome back to the show.
Caryl, thank you for inviting me back. Happy to be here.
So let's just jump right into it. So where do you see purpose and social innovation evolving in the coming year?
So I think over time, purpose has been very much aligned with business strategy. It's starting to strengthen, right? Where almost every organization today has a purpose or social impact function that is aligned with their business. And I think that's going to continue. But one other area that we see for next year is really how AI is going to permeate this work. And everything from the rise of AI agents, the focus on AI ethics, how AI can be used to personalize customer service or personalize a learning experience, how nonprofit organizations can use AI to really understand their communities and understand how to better impact those communities. I do see that shift as we move into next year and how important it is to really fully understand AI and how it could be used for social impact.
That's perfect. That's absolutely perfect. So you've talked about AI as an opportunity and a challenge. Are there other predictions you have besides AI, which is ginormous? I've got that. But any other areas that you would say you're looking into 2025 and, social impact, opportunities, challenges?
There are three things that I'm thinking about around predictions. The first is around the use of more guardrails, right, around AI. If you really think about it, AI ethics is something everyone should understand. And what's the responsible use of AI? And it's important for our communities to understand that. It's important for nonprofits to understand that. You want to also not just take advantage of the AI opportunity, but understand how to use it in the best way possible. So, for example, there's a focus around shadow AI, and that's the misuse of AI, especially in the education system or with employers. And people need to understand what's the responsible use of AI based on where you are, right? Are you in school, in university? Are you at your work of employment? Do you understand how to use it responsibly? So, as I think about next year, the increase in AI agents, which actually execute the work for you based on the prompt you provide, and the increase in shadow AI, both of those will require more of a focus around AI ethics. The second area around predictions is, and we've been talking about this for quite some time, Caryl, is the opportunity for lifelong learning. This can no longer be one and done. You learn something and then you start working and you actually never upskill or reskill yourself again. The opportunity for lifelong learning is going to be something everyone needs to understand. And right now it's all about AI. But then everybody needs to understand what is cybersecurity? And then when you think about future technologies like quantum, what is that going to mean, right? Down the line. So everyone needs to understand that lifelong learning is something they all have to consider. And it's not just learning one topic and done. And then the last thing I would say is really around the use, and I touched on this earlier, the use of AI to provide that better educational experience. I think educational entities and organizations with learning platforms will really need to consider, how do you integrate AI to provide that personalized learning experience? And I think that's going to become a competitive advantage for those who are able to do that. So I think those are the three areas that I see being significant as we move into 2025.
Great. So, lots to learn and lifelong learning.
Well, one of the things I enjoyed and what attracted me to IBM was the opportunity to learn new things and learn new technologies. I'm a curious person overall, but being able to come and learn about AI or hybrid cloud or, environmental data, I think that's what excites me. And I think if you want to be successful in any job, you have to have that curiosity and that opportunity to always be able to upskill yourself.
Perfect, because that leads right into my next question, which is, what advice would you give to purpose and social innovation professionals? So one is lifelong learning, be insanely curious and put the time in.
Yeah, definitely. I think as part of lifelong learning is, how do you make sure you have those immediate skills around AI? I mean, something as simple as, how do you master the art of prompt writing? How do you create the right prompt to get the response you want, right, with an AI assistant? And then when you move to AI agents, how do you create the prompt to be able to go and execute what you need? So understanding what AI is and upskilling yourself in AI, I think that is one of the pieces of advice that I will share with everyone who are on the journey around lifelong learning. I think the other things that, are always important to me, and they were great for my career, is, how do you find the right mentors? How do you find the right partners and supports, right, within your organization? Whether you are in the university space where mentors help to guide my, journey through engineering, to be able to get employment, to be able to, move up in my career, and also at the employer level as well. So I do think finding the right mentors, finding people that you can have discussions around AI with and learn from, and then upskilling yourself, right? Even starting with some very basic ways to understand AI fundamentals and AI ethics, all the way to really fully understanding, if that's something that is important to you, how do you actually build models, or how do you implement, these AI assistants? So I think there's a lot of opportunity for people to upskill themselves.
That's brilliant. So I'd love you to predict, what do you think are the most important social issues in the U.S. and then global? Because, the world is different in different places.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really tough question because there are just so many global issues. And I travel, significantly. I meet with my teams all over the world. And, there is the focus on hunger. There's a focus on, very specific, human rights issues, for example. There's the focus on climate change and environmental threats and how that's impacting certain communities. I know for me, I support a lot through the volunteerism that I do. So I will work on creating no-sew blankets for cancer patients. I will pack book bags with supplies for children who don't have access to those types of supplies. I will help feed the hungry where I can. As far as what we do from a corporate perspective, our focus is really in two areas. How do we make sure we are providing the right skills for all? We want to make sure we have opportunity for all. And with the acceleration of technology, with the need and demand from corporations for people to have the right AI skills, my focus is, how do I bring this to them, make it available for free, and help them connect those skills to a real job opportunity that can increase their economic and social mobility. And that is the area that my team and my organization and IBM focus on the most. And that's in the university space, that is in the high school space, but also adults who need new job opportunities and who need to also reskill and upskill themselves. And then in sustainability, how do we use our expertise? How do we use our access to data and our access to AI platforms to really help those communities that have been impacted the most by climate change and environmental threats? And we do that as well. So those are the two areas of focus. And I can tell you, Caryl, no matter where I travel in the world, governments and communities are still focused on those two things, education and sustainability, and how we uplift those communities.
That's super. Very well stated. So this has been a wonderful conversation, and I always like to give the last word to you. So is there anything else that you'd like to state regarding what you predict for 2025?
Yeah, no, I think, again, it's AI, and how we can use it to better our communities, how we can use it to improve our lives, and the importance of upskilling and making sure that you're ready. And I think that's why it's so important for people to be aware of how AI can shift and change their jobs and how they need to be ready for the next set of jobs that will be created and how they have to make sure they have the right skills to do that. So I'm excited about how we think about this in 2025 and beyond, and how we're able to help even more communities around the world.
Thank you, Justina. You never disappoint.
Thank you, Caryl.
Martin Whittaker, one of my favorite people to have conversations with on Purpose 360. So welcome back to the show, Martin.
Thank you, Caryl. It's always great to be here.
Oh, I love our conversations. So I'm going to start out with the one that's on everyone's mind, which is, what role should companies play in social issues in a Trump administration?
Well, I don't know that it's that different than they should play under a Biden administration. I think you have companies' role in society. As you know, we define that by asking the public. And this year, we've done that as we've done that for the last decade. And we did see some changes. We're going to be announcing the detailed results of that. But it's clear to us that the public does want companies to step up and step in on kind of social issues that are related to their business, and less interested in companies speaking up and speaking out on things unrelated to their companies. So that's an important point. Secondly, in all our work this year, I think we have seen the issues that decided the election, the issues that kind of gave rise to Trump victory, kind of reflected in the issues that people associate with just business behavior. So those are issues connected to employee wellness at work, the strength of benefits. We saw a lot of interest in care and people being able to enter the workforce, look after, aging parents or children. A lot of focus on fair pay, obviously. I mean, compensation, living wage, fair pay has always been at the top of the list of issues. So we haven't seen a huge change. Now, I don't expect under a Trump administration companies' role is going to be very different. I do think that the expectation on companies to be leaders in their communities, to be a good employer, to think about the health of their products and how they're supporting, health and safety and environmental quality and stuff like that. I think that continues. So I'm not sure there's a major difference.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. You give tons of counsel to companies all across the country, whether they're national or multinational. And so what advice would you want to give them, setting aside Trump administration, in terms of how they address their purpose, priorities, and activations in 2025?
Well, I would put it this way. They got to hit the gym.
They got to hit the gym.
At the gym, I think this is going to be about the business case, the strength of the business case. This is about tying stakeholder leadership, whether it's your workforce, customers, communities, environment, tying that to the generation of value, profits, and returns. And for too long, it's been too easy for companies to make commitments and future pledges about how good they're going to be. And, we've seen that with DEI, we've seen that with ESG, we've seen that with climate, future climate commitments. And if you're really serious about those issues as business issues, it's time to get serious about what data do you need? How do you do those things? How do you connect that to the strength of the business case? You'll be a lot more disciplined, a lot more committed, a lot more as kind of focused on the ROI of that work as you are on the ROI of other operational strategic business issues. So hit the gym, put in the hard work, don't worry about looking good, focus on being good, and then let the results follow.
So in that measurement, business connected view, there has been a lot of, did we say, backlash on at least the terminology ESG, the work in DE&I. Companies seem to be going backward. Is that the case from where you sit?
We've certainly seen companies kind of pull back on their public commitments, no doubt. We've been tracking that over the course of 2024. Many others have been tracking that. It's well documented. Walmart, I think, was the latest, right, just before Thanksgiving. Walmart didn't pull out of DEI altogether. It's just shifting its strategy, as many other companies are. We've also seen a lot of companies re-up and reaffirm their commitment to kind of the issues that fall under DEI. I'll come back to that in a second. JP Morgan is one. I saw Colgate-Palmolive, I think, just came out with a DEI report. So there's a lot of companies who don't get the headlines because they're not changing their position, who are all systems go. I think what we're seeing the shift overall, Caryl, is how companies talk about it privately as well, how they think about implementation. Goes back to what I said earlier about really getting disciplined about what you mean by DEI, putting in the hard work of, okay, we believe we want to create equal opportunities for everybody in this company without any kind of bias or discrimination. How are we exactly going to do that? How do we measure that that's happening? How do we understand the business case, et cetera? So that doesn't happen overnight. That's not a commitment that you make to, or a commitment in terms of a target. That's a process. That's an investment in your people, and that takes time, like any other human capital investment. So we do see companies framing DEI differently. Again, it's around investing in workforce, training, access to advancement in the workplace, upskilling, and sort of more broader, I suppose, human capital investments. And I think that's probably what's going to happen in 2025. You're going to see a lot more focus on workforce, workplace, well-being related issues and tied very strongly to a business case for investing in people.
I'm curious if you are doing any engagement with boards to try and up-level their understanding of this and the greater integration with ROI.
We do some. We'd like to do more. Most of our work right now is with either C-suite or level below, direct report to C-suite. I would say we have 3 levels of relationships with companies, Caryl. One is just purely through the rankings. We rank 1,000 companies. The majority of them are engaged with us in that process, giving us data, responding to our data, et cetera. But it's like a transactional relationship throughout the rankings. We want to make sure we're reflecting that performance accurately. So that's one level. The second level would be, okay, we've seen what you guys are all about at Just Capital. We want to improve. We'd like your thoughts on what we could be doing better. Where might we be investing? Help us understand the rankings. Help us understand our performance. So we have deeper relationships with those companies. And then there's several dozen, maybe 50 or so, maybe more than that, 50, 75, where we have, I'd say, kind of high-level ongoing relationships. They're involved in our program work. They're licensing our new toolkit. They are involved in our corporate impact lab, our programs. We're advising them in some way, shape, or form. So that's a deeper, ongoing relationship. And we want more of those relationships because, we're all about trying to help companies create value for themselves and for their shareholders and for society. That to us is what stakeholder capitalism is all about. And so, that doesn't come purely from a ranking. It comes by doing the work with the companies. So we want to invest in that part of our platform.
Okay. I always like to give the last word to my guest. So any other advice or counsel to practitioners or just the overall view of purpose in 2025?
One thing that is going to happen with the new administration, it's fairly clear that if we're going to get out of this debt crisis that this country has to be driven by growth, has to be driven by the private sector. And so companies are going to have to think about and act on what really drives growth. And I think that is going to have to be done in a way that doesn't exacerbate or perpetuate a lot of the inequalities that have given rise to populism, that have given rise to a sense among millions of Americans that capitalism isn't working for them. And so you got to grow and you got to have more people with a stake. Like, how do you do that? That is going to define 2025. Talk about purpose. That is the highest purpose I think the business has in 2025.
Beautiful. Martin, you're always so articulate. I love your point of view. You're working with lots of great companies. I suggest to any of our colleagues, clients, and friends that they must participate with Just Capital because you are so smart at what you're doing. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Caryl.
Caryl Stern, welcome back to Purpose 360. It's so delightful to have you and to ask you one of our favorite questions, which is, what are your purpose predictions for 2025?
Well, first of all, Caryl, thanks so much for having me back. I love having a conversation with you. But my predictions for 2025, I think the country is so divided right now that I am hopeful. After great chaos comes calm. And so I am hoping and crossing my fingers that we might find some calm in 2025. I don't know whether I'm optimistic in thinking that, but I am at least hoping for that. When it comes to purpose, I think one of the big things we're going to see in 2025 is attention paid to people with disabilities. In the past, we have defined DEI primarily in terms of race, religion, and ethnicity. And I am hopeful that we will be able to expand how we think about that. While many DEI statements mention people with disabilities, you don't hear a lot about it, you don't see a lot about it, and yet I believe we're going to see that change in 2025.
And for our listeners, can you talk about the size of the audiences of the people that have disabilities? It's large.
16% of the entire world's population has a disability of some kind. So that's one of the largest minorities you're going to find.
Exactly.
But, if you look just in the United States, 1 in 7 Americans under the age of 65 has a disability, and it becomes 1 in 5 once you cross that threshold. So I get to be in the 1 in 5 group. So really, there's a number of things happening in 2025 that lead me to that prediction. One, it's the 35th anniversary of the American with Disabilities Act. So you will see events and fanfare that will draw people's attention there. You are already beginning to see some mainstreaming in commercials and other things where suddenly we are beginning to see some attention paid there. But also technology, in particular AI, is bringing to bear new products and services that are changing the way people with disabilities interact with the rest of the world. And so it's a really exciting time. And then additionally, as we look to the next few years, and you see the Special Olympics, the Paralympics, the regular Olympics, and the World Cup all coming to the Americas, there is a focus right now on health, on wellness, on our bodies and our abilities. And so I think it's going to open up really innovation and opportunities for us to finally address that last bastion of rights.
That's terrific. So you give a lot of advice over your career. You've been so generous with professionals. What advice do you give to them?
I think, number one, we all need to take a deep breath. Doesn't matter what profession we're in. We need to start 2025 by saying, this is the year we want to reunify. I did a toast at an event that LionTree hosted, and I talked about, I hope in 2025, we will learn how to listen to all that we hear, not just hear what we listen for. And that's what I think to all of our purpose professionals, we need to really perhaps lead the way in that and be willing to say, we may not agree. Let's look for common solutions as opposed to having to have common ground in order to work together.
That's wonderful. Do you have a second piece of advice for purpose professionals, since the first one was so profound?
Yeah, the second one is learn to laugh. I think that when you work in purpose, you get your rewards by the people you serve. People always say to me, when you ran UNICEF, how did you survive? All of the traumas you had to enter into and the horrors that many children around the globe have to endure. And I always say to them, well, I had the privilege to endure those things with children. And children play soccer in the middle of a refugee camp. Children will find, something to make a doll out of in the wake of an earthquake. Kids will make you laugh. They will find funny things. And so I've tried really hard myself, and I have to work at it some days more than others to learn to laugh and to remember that purpose work doesn't mean I have to cry all the time. It means I have to be committed to taking that deep breath, working through the problems, bringing people along with me, and being willing to come along with them and be a follower, not just a leader.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's great. Do you feel that the advice you would give purpose professionals in the U.S. would differ from those globally?
It's interesting because obviously with the advent of ESG, there's a backlash in the United States and there's a lack of a backlash in Europe. So clearly, I think we're facing some different challenges on opposite sides of the pond. In the developing world, it's yet an entirely different, then it's a survival moment, and I think you bring forth different skills in each of those situations.
In terms of challenges, you've talked a lot about really fabulous things people need to really engage and listen, and there's new issues. Any significant challenges that you would like to add that purpose professionals, they need to, really spend some time about them?
Well, obviously, the backlash to ESG in the States is a challenge to all of us, and I've tried very hard to say to people, look, I was doing diversity work before the letters DEI were in the vocabulary. So let's stop using terms and let's talk about program. What is that we're trying to achieve? We're trying to achieve equity. We're trying to achieve equal access to opportunity. Those should be the goals. And that's, again, where you look for common solutions. One of my favorite ways to think about common solutions, Tim Schreiber, this is his, not mine, but he described it to me where he said, if we try to come together around gun control, the pros and the cons are never going to agree. They're just not. We're going to line up our statistics on both sides. We're going to stick to our guns or not our guns, and we're not going to ever agree. If, on the other hand, we were to say, let's stop the violence in our communities, we could all agree on that. Nobody wants to live in a violent community. So let's go for common solutions. And then let's, after we've built relationships, come back to try to find common ground.
But that's beautiful. And I always like to give the microphone to my guest for the last words. So anything you'd like to add to for our listeners?
I guess the thing that I would say to you that now that I'm in what I call my preferment, the swan song of my career where I get to do what I prefer, is that everybody keeps saying to me, you're going to retire? No, I'm going to prefer, is to live in the moment a bit. I think I spent a great deal of my life worrying about the next step. During my UNICEF time, I think because I saw how fragile life was, I did stop and learn how to be in the moment a little better. And I'm trying very hard to hold on to that. And especially in this moment in my life where my friends and my family are aging, where I'm seeing my own body doesn't do everything it used to do, and I'm losing friends and family at a greater clip than perhaps I was 10 years ago, that I want to start to really value the moment I'm in.
That's beautiful. So Caryl Stern, it is always a pleasure. You are filled with wisdom. no matter where you are, what organization you're leading. And I want to thank you for your very insightful predictions for 2025.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. Anytime. Always good to see you.
Welcome, Jenny Lawson. Jenny is the CEO of Keep America Beautiful. She's an extraordinary individual, a friend and a colleague, and I know we're going to have a wonderful conversation. So welcome back to the show, Jenny.
Thanks, Caryl. Great to be here.
So why don't we start? Just in general, Jenny, where do you see purpose, and some people might call it sustainability, there's lots of names, evolving in the coming year?
I think in times of uncertainty and change, an authentic purpose for a brand helps on so many levels. It helps to navigate challenging conversations. It helps to articulate vision for organizations. So I think purpose has a really important role to play over the next 4 years. Sustainability is a mandate that is coming outside of U.S. politics these days. It's a global mandate for change that the vast majority of at least the Fortune 1000 have really stepped into making changes and mindset changes that are necessary for the future. So I actually think that staying the course with authentic purpose and a focus on sustainability commitments really is how companies can navigate these challenging times.
And we all agree they are challenging times. So what are some of the opportunities for an organization or a brand in the coming year?
Selfishly, at Keep America Beautiful, we have our eyes set on July of 2026, which is the country's 250th birthday. And so I think there's an opportunity ahead for companies, too, to think about how are they going to play into the country's 250th birthday? What is going to be their path to celebrating what brings us together? And how do you use that, back to my previous comment, on that purpose journey over the year ahead? And so we're super excited and have gotten lots of interest from companies in helping us imagine and celebrate that moment.
And it's my understanding you're going to be working with over 25,000 communities, helping to clean up and green up and beautify. Would you like to just comment on what your vision is for that?
You've got it. I mean, our big vision is, can we as a company pick up 25 billion pieces of litter? It would be more than half of all that's out there. If we could pick up 50 billion, we would pick it all up. And that seems like exactly the right direction for celebrating such a significant birthday.
You've got a lot of sustainability and purpose professionals listening to this podcast. You've given them some interesting ideas for 2025, but what other advice would you give them as they're looking into a tumultuous environment?
The Deloitte Trust Barometer, there's lots of indicators that continue to show that globally and nationally, we all trust our brands, those big voices from business, to be, especially the workplace, a place of truth and authenticity, and that's an important role for companies to continue to play. I think authentically leading through your sustainability messaging for how you live up to commitments that you've already made, all of those things matter. And for demonstrating that, not only in advertising, but with how your employees volunteer, how they engage in their communities, and how you show up with partners in getting the work done in the next 4 years. It's a true leadership opportunity for business in many ways that'll be unprecedented from any administration before.
I'd love you to talk about the power of hands-on volunteerism and getting hands into the dirt. What is that like for an individual?
It changes everyone involved every single time. It changes the experience that individual has in their own community. They start to know their community better, literally at a ground level, right? They start to understand
what are the drivers in a neighborhood? What's happening? The dynamics, anthropologists study litter to understand cultures. Litter can tell you a lot about a neighborhood. So what's happening in those neighborhoods? What are some of the issues? Who turns up to help, right? The mothers groups, the citizen groups, the business groups that you serve alongside of when you volunteer. The fresh air, getting out in our communities is good. It's good for the community. It's good for the individual. It's a great way to show up in neighborhoods.
Beyond beautification, cleaning up and beautification, what other important social issues do you predict that will come to the fore, get a lot more attention in 2025?
We're going to see civil rights issues continue to be very important in communities. And so as the mother of a trans daughter, I worry about those issues in the year ahead. And I think issues of safety for LGBTQ community members is something that will need our attention over the next 4 years. I also think that understanding how to engage change that is both economically important for communities, is preserving and improving environmental justice will continue to be issues that will need to be clarified and really given attention over the next 4 years.
Super. Before I let you have the last comment, I would love to ask you, what role should companies play in a Trump administration?
As I sort of hinted at earlier, companies will be a voice that is listened to in this administration. They also can be a place for authentic dialogue, for authentic commitment to sustainability, to the environment, to issues of diversity and equity, and holding those values closely and publicly, I think will be important benchmarks as we go through this next administration.
Super. That's wonderful, Jenny. And I always like to give the last comment to my guest. So what haven't we discussed, or what would you like to add?
At this time of year, and we've been friends for years now, and the power of friendships and collaborations and partnerships are going to be how we are successful in the coming years. The more we continue to work together, building towards the values that we have all defined over the last 8-10 years, I think we can't let our foot off the gas now. We have to keep going. And I look forward to doing that with you and with our the companies that we are engaged with and who are interested in going on that journey with us as well. So thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's our pleasure. So thank you, Jenny. Wonderful comments as always.
Thank you, Caryl.
This podcast was brought to you by some amazing people, and I'd love to thank them. Ann Hundertmark and Kristen Kenny at Caryl Stern on Purpose, Pete Wright and Andy Nelson, our crack production team at True Story FM, and you, our listener. Please rate and rank us, because we really want to be as high as possible as one of the top business podcasts available, so that we can continue exploring together the importance and the activation of authentic purpose. Thanks so much for listening.